Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our monthly workshop. My name is Whitney Ziegler. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Rocks Organizing. I'm a certified professional organizer, and our team assists clients through difficult life transitions. We help folks with estate clearouts, moving, and just feeling more comfortable in their own space. And we help them align their spaces to their big rocks, to what's most important to them. So today we're going to be talking about consigning and selling your stuff, which is a very popular topic. We get a lot of questions about this, and we're blessed to work with some wonderful people today, some experts who are here to share their knowledge with us. And I'm going to go ahead and read a brief introduction for each of our four speakers. And then we have a couple pre-planned questions, and then we'll open up the floor wide for your questions, because we want you to get the information that you came for today. We want this to be of value to you. So this is Jennifer Campbell, and I've had the honor of knowing Jennifer for about 8 years now. She's been selling items online for over 20 years. Her background consists of having been a professional organizer for 20 years, as well as a jewelry artist. She was awarded Portland Fashion and Styles Award Best Accessory Designer in 2013. Jennifer's also a mural artist, and she created the 18 leather teepees for the movie Dances with Wolves. She's currently has a dealer space at Curiosity's Vintage Mall in Tigard, as well as selling online. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
I'll be asking you a question in a bit after I introduce our other three folks. Here we go. This is Larry Berman. His company is called 6040, and Larry will tell us what that means later. Consignment has been a passion of Larry's for the past 10 years. It started as a hobby, and then it grew into a business, and he's helped many clients sell their quote unquote old treasures. Never assume something is not of value. There are gigantic marketplaces around the world, and someone someplace may want what you are willing to sell. Now is a great time to convert your old treasures into spendable cash. We're excited to have Larry here. He works with many of our clients. And our next expert is Juli Kirby. So as a child, Juli regularly spent hours drawing scale design mock-ups of her bedroom on butcher paper, rearranging every piece of furniture, wall art, and decor, and making plans for the new pieces, which were often vintage, to acquire to make her vision come to life. What she didn't know then was that she was practicing and setting the stage for her eventual career. After earning her degrees in literary studies and journalism, she entered the working world in retail, quickly moving into display merchandising and then transitioning into merchandising management for a national catalog company. In 2016, Juli founded a Clean Slate PDX, a full-service estate sale and consignment company. She happily spends her days, she and her team, working with local clients, finding new homes for their previously used items. Whether she's running an estate sale or selling high-quality items through her retail consignment showroom at Urbanite, Juli loves to play matchmaker. Thanks for being here, Juli.
Thank you.
Our fourth expert, last but not least, we have Dave Smith of Smith Brothers China. And Dave's family has lived in Oregon for their entire lives. His brother was a Salem police detective, and Dave worked as a vice president for American International Group. When his brother decided to retire, the brother asked Dave to join him and do China full time. From a hobby started 40 years ago, they have built the business to one of the largest in the country. They're now wondering about retiring again as their inventory is taking over their lives. Their children are asking what they'll do with the inventory if something happens to Dave and his brother, and he understands their concern. So we'll hear more about that later, Dave. So thank you so much to all of you for being here. And then the first question I wanted to throw to Jennifer, which is, can you explain to us what is the difference between consignment and resale?
So for consignment, it means that the client still owns the item. I am selling the item on their behalf, and then I would take a percentage, and then the client would get either an equal percentage or a lesser percentage. And I don't, and then resale for me, it's what I do is I buy items in lots. And so if I find, what I'll do is I'll have a client email me pictures of either or you, Whitney, either in general of an area of items that they wish to sell, so I can get an idea of what they wish to sell. And if it's actually what I kind of specialize in, which is really broad, and maybe they have some particular items, and then I can go over and to their place, which West Side is what I deal in, and meet with them and make a buy of the whole amount of what they wish to sell. And I do smalls. I don't do furniture and I don't do electronics. How's that?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Dave, I know that you typically do resale rather than consignment. Is there anything that you wanted to add to what Jennifer said?
Not a lot. Basically, what we do is find china. And my problem with consignment is the fact that we may have a stack of, say, 12 dinner plates. And a month later, we're getting around to selling it. And we get down in the bottom of that stack, and we find 2 plates are broken. When did that happen? Was it in our control, or did they come to us that way? So we've just decided a long time ago not to do consignments. We just buy outright and then sell by the piece or groups. And we just eliminate that problem for a breakable commodity.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Another question that we get asked a lot is about estate sales. So Juli, I was hoping you could give us a brief overview, kind of estate sale 101. And then after that, we'll open up the floor to everybody for questions to all 4 of you. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great. So estate sale 101, how to distill that down into a very quick thing is we often get called in. There are a couple of different reasons why people have estate sales. Maybe someone's family member has passed away and a family needs to clear out a household's worth of items. Another reason to have an estate sale is because someone is moving. So someone might be downsizing, or we have a lot of young families who are moving internationally, and so they leave everything behind. And so my crew comes in, we organize, research, and price everything and sell it. So what that does is help folks get rid of all of the items that they or their families have accumulated over the years at a profit. And then what most estate sale companies do or offer is then after an estate sale is done to do a final clean out of a house. So we also work with companies who clear out companies who come in and help us get rid of whatever is left after an estate sale and leave families with a cleaned out house that can then either go be turned over to a realtor to go on the market, or the house may already be sold and gets turned over to its new owner. That's the 101. That's the very brief version of the estate
Thank you
sale.
for that. And just FYI that we have partnered with Juli on many projects in the past, and that's something that our team offers is to come in afterwards and clear everything out. One thing, Juli, that we also get questions about is, does someone have to have a minimum value of items in their home? And then how far out are you scheduling? Do they need to have a little parking available? Kind of a few logistical questions for folks.
Yeah, those are all really great questions. So each estate sale company kind of works differently. Some estate sale companies will take on any project, small or large. For us, we do have a minimum. So we do a minimum of $20,000 gross sales and above. And then the question about how far out do you have to book an estate sale? Estate sale companies are extremely busy right now. Most of my colleagues that I work closely with are booked out a minimum of 3 to 4 months. We get an exceptional number of calls per week asking if we have availability within the same month or 1 or 2 months out. And it is extremely rare that we or the people that we work closely with have that much availability or that quick of availability. So we like to counsel people, if you're thinking about selling your house or downsizing or whatnot, engage the services of someone like me as soon as humanly possible. It makes all the difference in the world. And then estate sales can be done in neighborhoods where parking is tough. We've done estate sales up in the West Hills where there was literally no parking at all. And we've used church parking lots and run buses back and forth. So it can be done all over the place, but planning ahead is really essential.
Thank you for that. And cute dog just popped its head up. With that.
Oh, yeah. That's my dog, Winnie. She's a golden doodle. I can't believe she's being quiet right now.
We're very lucky. With that, I would love to open up the floor to questions from people who are attending today. So please just raise your electronic hand or your real hand and anyone have any burning questions?
Oh, hi.
Sorry, let's call on Jill.
Yeah, my question is on the estate sales. What is, you said 20,000 net. What is, I mean, what was that gross or net? And
that would be,
is that what you hope to make?
So $20,000 is the gross minimum for us to take on an estate sale. So that would be the total amount that the estate sale brings in. And then we do a 45-55 split with the client. So the client gets 55% of that and we get 45. And then client is also responsible for things like the possible hauling expenses after an estate sale. So there are always items that are left over after an estate sale when the house needs to be cleared out. So the hauling expenses do get taken out of a client's portion of the proceeds. We also sometimes set up deep cleaning of a house. So we have our cleaners come in. That can be taken out of a client's portion of the proceeds. And I'm trying to think of other things. We also make special arrangements with clients to they may have things that need to be sent to family somewhere else. And so if we need to ship things to family, then that might come out of a family's net proceeds as well.
And what, I guess what got me going is when you said you had buses going from a parking lot to the estate. I mean, gets spendy. Did the client pay for that?
That would, if something like that is needed, if a shuttle service is needed from a parking lot to a house, then yes, that would be the client's responsibility.
Thank you.
This is Miyuki Yoshida. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, on my laptop. Quick question for Juli on the estate. Is it not safe for an elderly person to have an estate sale and still living in that house?
We do.
Is that not safe? Like, if I have a family member that's elderly and just kind of wants to get rid of stuff, right? But there's going to be moving back into the house and living alone, I'm just kind of worried about, robbers and people who come to the, shop and then they notice. Or is that, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we do not do estate sales where someone is living in a home. In order for us to do an estate sale, and most other estate sale companies would work this way as well, the home has to be a place that no one is living in. So family would have to have moved out, or yeah, we don't do estate sales in homes where people are
Because of
currently.
safety reason, right? Because, you know, as I mentioned, right, it's kind of dangerous, right, for them to move back in, right?
Well, beyond that, when we're going in and doing an estate sale, we are there, say 9 o'clock to 3 or 4 o'clock every day, and potentially on the weekends. And so we need full access to a home, and it's a work environment once we start working there. And so it would make it extremely difficult for someone to be living in the house while we're also working. And yeah, actually, we've never had anyone request that we come in and do an estate sale and then they would be moving back into the house afterward. So that's something we've never been tasked with before.
And then I had a question for Dave for China. So should we send you pictures of like the China and see if you can sell it, or what's your procedure of the fancy China ware? Because nowadays people don't use those, you know, fancy Linux China ware, you know, we're using, you know, paper plates or whatever. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, sending us pictures is the best way. What's important though is to take a picture of the plate, for instance, but also of the reverse side, because the back stamp tells me what the age of the plate is. It tells me a confirmation of the manufacturer as well as the pattern name. So that gives me a chance to be able to see if it's something of quality that we want to deal with, something that has enough value to make it worthwhile. If you have an obscure pattern made in who knows the depths of China, and it has no market here, it's better to see a picture of it so I can tell you what your potential is for sale, versus you going through all the work just to find out it's not worth enough.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll be contacting.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for your questions. I did get a private message in the chat with a question here. Question comes, so it's, what suggestions do you have for resources for consignment of household items, clothes, etc.? I know that's pretty broad. Maybe we could, does anyone want to tackle clothing, for example, and does anyone want to tackle household items?
Well, I'll jump in. For us, we consign mostly furniture, decorative, and decorative items. Clothing for us is something that we don't do. There are, however, specific clothing consigners in town. And it depends upon what brand of clothing, how new the clothing is. Are you talking vintage clothing or more current clothing? And so there are a lot of avenues for clothing in town right now. And it really is just kind of sitting down and making phone calls to the clothing resellers in town. Some just outright buy and some consign. But you have to find the right place for the particular items that you have. And that's what takes a little bit of time.
In our team's experience, we haven't found it to be worthwhile consigning clothing, just given the amount of time for what you get back. I see our experts nodding. Yeah, there are some online companies like the Real, I think, for high-end designer type resale. So the next, oh, go ahead.
Can I ask the question?
Yeah, please.
I have artwork that ranges in price from like $100 to $1,000. I don't know where to go. I would like to consign it or sell it, but I have no resource to figure out where to go.
I might be able to help you in that regard.
Yes, Yes.
Depending upon what the item is and if it could be identified, if there's a signature or some type of certification or authentication of the artwork, the opportunities to consign it and sell it, for example, through eBay, is something that really should be considered. It's a gigantic marketplace. And typically, if it's something that can be identified, there's somebody out there that is probably going to want it. Assuming that it's not something that is too gigantic or too heavy, that might be a reasonable marketplace to consider.
well, most have signatures and I can't come up with the word. So how would, do I get in touch with someone to do that? Because I'm not going to sell it through eBay.
No,
I don't
I
have-
understand.
Yeah.
I understand that. And, certainly if you made the information available, I or one of the other people here, I'm sure would be able to help you figure out whether or not it's something which is resellable or marketable.
Okay,
Peggy-
so I could get in touch with you, Larry?
That would be fine.
Yes, and Peggy, we will be sharing the contact information for all of our speakers in the chat, and then we will share it in an email afterwards as well.
Thank you.
Whitney,
You're
Whitney,
welcome. Yeah,
can I go
anyone
back?
attending. Oh, go ahead. Yes, please, Larry.
Can I go back to the previous lady? If she was concerned about having an estate sale at her place. I think that's really an opportune time for the personal consignment type of service, where someone who is a consigner comes in, identifies those items which may have some marketability, and then works a relationship out with her or her mother, and then removes the items from the house, and that prevents the need to open up the house to strangers coming in.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. We do have another question in the chat from Melissa. In general, what category of items are selling well these days? For instance, I heard that no one wants China sets or silver anymore. They are bought as replacements, ? I have antiques, jewelry, collectibles, China, silverware, art, etc. Dave, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, it's amazing. I cannot tell you the number of times that I've talked with people who have said, I received this set of china as a wedding gift 40 years ago. I've never used it. I have to get rid of it. My kids don't want it. My kids all want IKEA, Crate and Barrel, Williams Sonoma. They want things they can put in a microwave and a dishwasher, and I can't put my china in there. What in the world am I going to do with it? The problem also revolves around the lack of outlets. A lot of the resale shops are closed. Antique malls are closed. It's hard to find somebody that's interested in taking china. First of all, it's breakable. Secondly, it does show wear, any distressing issues. A lot of the places that estate dealers used to deal with are no longer available. In our case, we're fortunate because we sell worldwide, and that helps a lot. It's amazing how many times we ship 200 cups and saucers to a lady in China, for instance, or Japan or Australia, that are looking to resell in their location. But to try and do it locally is very difficult. I feel sorry for people because years ago you could have a really nice set of Lenox china that might be valued at $500 to $1,000. And nowadays I've had people give me sets of china just to get them out of the house so that they can get on with their lives. It's amazing. It's an entirely different marketplace out there now.
Are there any particular brands that you deal in that do have value in the marketplace right now?
Yes, we specialize really in English chinas. We started out in Spode about 40 years ago. We do Spode, we do Royal Worcester, Minton, Royal Dalton, Wedgwood, the good high quality English chinas. We also do American Lenox, Syracuse. We try and stay away from ones such as Haviland. Not that they aren't high quality, but they're very hard to sell because Haviland, I think, was very proud of their product. They never put a pattern name on a lot of theirs. So as a result, all we can say is it's a beautiful pattern with red roses on it that go around the outer band, and that's all we can say. We also try and avoid a lot of the Japanese chinas. Mikasa is a good one in many cases because they're still a pattern that is well received. Noritake made thousands and thousands of patterns, but the market value has really dropped out for Noritake. Ones like Mieto and a lot of the lesser known names just don't have the marketplace anymore. Younger people are not looking at quality china or lesser china when they can buy something cheap. So it
And
presents a problem.
replaceable.
All I can suggest is you just need to contact somebody and let them do a little research first.
Well, thank you. Dave, could you talk about silver? Because I know in the past you used to purchase silver from clients as well.
Yeah, we do a little bit of silver. We're far from experts on silver. We know China extremely well. We know silver much less. And unfortunately, right now, a lot of the silver is going to go to melt. Especially if you have silver that's older, that's harder to identify and harder to be able to match up with somebody that wants to buy it. If it's a really well-known company and well-known pattern, yes, there is a market there as long as the silver is in good condition. If it's scratched up, bent, damaged in some ways, then it's probably best to send it to melt. But a lot of people, quite frankly, they take any silver sets, they total up the melt value, and then they present a bid for that set based on the melt value and not on the intrinsic value of what the set is. I always have to laugh because there's a lady I know locally here who has decided never to send anything to melt. She keeps everything with the idea that eventually everything will be melted.
Oh.
And she'll be the only one left with the sets of good silver. And I think that she has a lot of good thought process there.
She's thinking ahead. So we frequently also have clients who have silver plate. Does anyone want to take this question?
I will. I will. There is no value in most silver plate, and it is one of the very hardest things to sell. So even in estate sale world, we price silver plate items pennies on the dollar and just hope that it goes away. Yeah. If you go to Goodwill, there are racks and racks and racks and racks of silver plate. It's one of, from my point of view, for what we do, it is one of the hardest things to get rid of. And unfortunately, a lot of it goes to just donation.
Thank you for your brutal honesty there. Larry, were you going to add something?
I add to that just a little bit. I hear what everybody is saying and essentially agree with it, but I think it's really important for the client, the person at home who has items, not to make the assumption that something they have isn't worth anything. It never ceases to amaze me what people have and what potentially can be done with it. If it's anything that is typically old or antique, if it's jewelry, if it's artwork, even silver and gold and collectibles, even if they have them and they've been sitting in the closet for years collecting dust, it's probably helpful to have somebody take a look at it, just to give them peace of mind to know that it doesn't have value, or that they have some hidden treasure that would really benefit from having somebody help them with it.
Yeah, I'd like to second what Larry just said. It's usually the items that people think are the least valuable in their homes that end up being the most valuable when we're going in to do estate sales or going in and walking through to do consignment work. I absolutely agree with that, Larry, that the things that get passed over so often hold so much value that, it is great to get eyes on everything before assuming that it's worth nothing. Yeah.
One time we were working with Juli and clearing out a house, and we found these plastic spiral organizers that really don't look very spectacular, but they were worth $160 each, and there were 4 of them, and never would have guessed that in a million years.
Right.
Yep. I was thrilled. Yeah.
I'd like
I
to
have
add
my
something.
Same story, in that I never realized what people would do until my aunts, we did an estate sale at their house, and we had a dumpster on the side of the house. And people were climbing into the dumpster to take things out that were value to them and had no value to us.
Yeah.
So again, I follow what Larry had to say. Ask somebody, because invariably there may be something of more value than you ever have a thought of.
Right.
And to go back to that for estate sale purposes, if you are considering having an estate sale for your house, your family's house, anyone's house, don't get a dumpster and pre-clean the house for an estate sale.
Please.
Because
I know, right?
The things that get thrown out are usually worth, usually have a ton of value. And so we usually dumpster dive and pull all that stuff back out and sell it for thousands and thousands of dollars. So just word to the wise, never pre-clean a house if you're going to have an estate sale, please.
Right.
Well, that's good. And Jennifer, you wanted to add something.
Yes, I do. I think I'll third that, all of that. And please, if you're thinking of decluttering, downsizing, you're making a move, don't start picking out things that you want, that you think, oh, nobody's going to want this. I've recently sold a Cracker Jack flicker ring, a little plastic ring, for $125. And I get chills when I think of that one. And then a Buffalo license plate tag for a Model T for $400. And things like that are the things that get tossed. And I can't sell nowadays the Hummels and the little cutesy decor. If I put it, I don't even put it on eBay. If I put it all just for the heck of it, I'll put it in a space in my cabinet space at Curiosities Vintage Mall. And sometimes somebody's looking for a little gift for $10 because their mom or somebody still collects that sort of thing. And so I'm looking at my list of things that I look for. It's Boy Scout memorabilia, for example, old books, vintage typewriters, Art Deco, some mid-century modern, which some mid-century modern is really popular right now, if it sells, and then sometimes it doesn't. So things kind of, the demographic has changed so much since I've started my dealer space at Curiosities several years ago. When I started, I actually sold a lot of my personal antiques that I had collected and had in my art studio because I enjoyed having them around me. And so I still have some of those pieces, but it's changed with I'll call them the new generations, that they're downsizing, they're looking for different things. So from day to day, sometimes I'm surprised at what sells and really surprised at what doesn't. So please don't go through getting rid of the books and the old soap and the old nail polish. Just wait, call one of us.
That's
Get us
why we
in there.
bring you all in at the very beginning of a
Right.
project and have you sweep through the house first. And then when you've
Mhm.
taken the items of value,
Yeah,
it's
thank you.
about 95% of the clients who reach out to us don't have enough value for an estate sale. Maybe they have a
Mhm.
handful of valuable things. So it's wonderful to reach
Right.
out to you all, and you all can come take those
Right.
things and sell them to and get them to where they need to be. And then we'll kind of come in and do the rest. We
Thanks.
have a few more questions here in the chat. I'm still breaking apart Melissa's question because there were many different categories here, but does anyone want to speak about jewelry?
I do.
All right.
And look, sounded like Dave did as well. Dave, go ahead.
Larry,
No.
uh,
Oh,
Jennifer,
Larry, I'm sorry.
can we start with Jennifer and then go to Larry on that one?
Okay, what's the question about jewelry? If she could chunk that down?
Well, it basically, what's selling right now?
That's another one of those things. I never know. Okay, so costume jewelry sells if it's of a name type. Miriam Haskell, that's definitely antique, real, and that sells well. Some Avon, not all Avon sells. Things that are marked are easily identifiable. So Trifari, Monet, those are just a couple I'm thinking of. I'm going through a jewelry buy that I made right now. And then then there are a lot of earrings that I have in my space that are pierced earrings, and I've got them in there for $6. They aren't sterling, they aren't gold, but they're costume and they look really nice. And sometimes somebody just wants something to complete an outfit. So I like to look through, kind of get an idea of what the client has. The last one that I made the buy of was an 8-foot long table by 3 feet wide. And she was happy to let it go, and I was happy to have it. I know, right? That's all I got for now.
No, thanks for that. Larry, what did you want to add about jewelry? And then Julie too, if you have anything you want to share.
Well, I think jewelry is always something that needs to be looked at and evaluated. It's really important to determine whether or not it's fine jewelry or custom jewelry. It's important to know whether or not the stones that are there are of decent quality or if they're not. Right now, the value of gold is particularly high. It's just under $2,000 an ounce. Silver is at $23.50 an ounce. So as Dave was saying before, there's a lot of value there, and it shouldn't be ignored. The difficulty that you run into sometimes with jewelry is that people have particular attachments to jewelry. And sometimes it's really important to share with them that, your recommendation for it to be melted versus sold as jewelry has very little to do with, how they might feel about it. You need to be able to try to separate the two, and hopefully you can find a new home for it, but if not, it has tremendous value. The only other thing I wanted to add was that one of the things that, interesting enough, that I see fairly often and at pretty significant prices for resale are squash blossom necklaces.
Right.
They just, people love them. So if you have one that's laying in a jewelry chest collecting dust, you might be surprised as to what its value is.
Well, thank you, Larry. Julie, did you want to add anything about jewelry?
So consignment wise, we do not typically take jewelry on consignment. Estate sale wise, we've gone away from having jewelry in an estate sale for security and theft reasons. So what we tend to do estate sale wise is we will have dealers come in and brokers or whatnot, and we will sell the jewelry directly to them, so we don't have it on site. And I think Larry makes a really good point, is that the emotional value for some folks with jewelry, it's hard because you're not necessarily, you know, when we're selling jewelry to a gold buyer or a silver buyer or a gems buyer, it is likely to be melted or to be taken apart and used for something else. And so that's, you know, a particularly sensitive conversation to have with clients who are, you know, going through an emotional time with, you know, a loss of a family member or whatnot. But that's kind of where we're at right now. As far as I'm concerned with estate sale purposes, is that it is better to hand it off to someone who is an expert, knows the value of it, where the family can get a good return on it and not worry about theft, security at the estate sale itself.
Thank you for that. Juanita has a question. She has a set of about 20 fine pens. I apologize for my dog's barking. I'm sure someone's delivering a package right now, of course. So these pens are Pelican, Mont Blanc, etc. Does that fall under items that Larry or Jennifer would be interested in, or anybody here? Fine pens.
I am.
I've got to jump. I've got to jump in on
Go
that
ahead.
if I can.
Yeah, how about Larry then Jennifer?
Yeah,
Sure.
I just have to share an experience. I worked with a gentleman. This was several years ago. He had invited me to come over because he had a variety of things for me to look at. And it turns out that he had a collection of fountain pens. And he told me that they were in his safe and he was too old to get down there to open it.
Oh.
So he shared with me the combination. Of course, it took us hours to open the darn thing. But it turned out that he had about 30 or 40 of those types of fountain pens. And I must tell you that there is a huge marketplace for those. And depending upon which ones they are, they can sell anywhere from hundreds of dollars to literally thousands of dollars. And this fellow's collection that we ended up selling was probably one of the largest collections of valuable
Wow.
pens that I've ever seen. So, you know, absolutely. If you have something like that, you really need to talk with somebody and get an evaluation of each individual piece to determine its quality, its condition, whether or not it's been used, whether it comes with a box. I mean, everything that revolves around providing the product out to the marketplace is important to know about.
Jennifer, did you want to add anything?
I don't really think I need to add anything. That was really well said. And I think the one thing that stood out to me about the word evaluation, I can find value. Each of us can find values, and that's what we do, is find values for things. I am not an appraiser, and so I don't appraise items. And so if there's a certain item that a client may really want to know, okay, what's the definite value of this item? I just don't market myself as an appraiser because that's not what I do.
That
Something's
leads
only
to
worth
a
what someone's willing to pay for.
true.
Thank you.
Absolutely
That's
true.
it.
But Jennifer, you sparked a really good question. When does it make sense to bring in an appraiser? When does it feel necessary? And do you all have connections with appraisers if somebody needs a referral?
I can go and I'll just, shut it off, I guess, of that part. An appraiser is, especially if, it's regarding art, fine art, painting, that maybe the client says, I paid a lot for this. It's been in the family for many years. Maybe a jewelry piece that's been in the family for a lot of years. A jewelry piece that they know is, for example, antique, and grandmother had always said, this is gold, don't sell it, that kind of thing. And just keep in mind, I don't have a link to appraisers that I can think of offhand. However, keep in mind that there is a cost to have items appraised. And so you want to keep in mind that versus that possible value. So it might help to have one of us take a look at it, or call around to some appraisers and make appointments with them for a referral type of meeting.
Thank you. Does anybody want to add to what Jennifer shared?
Yeah, I do. For estate sales, I think it is really great to make sure, depending on what kind of home you have that you're turning over to an estate sale company, that if you feel like you might have a house that has some items in it that's worthy of appraisal, to make sure that the company that you're hiring has those connections. We just did a sale in Lake Oswego with a huge collection of vintage books. We found a book that was under a pile of garbage that we pulled out and started doing a little bit of research and thought, hey, if this is what we think it is, this is something really special. And so we called in a rare book appraiser, and we ended up selling that book to someone in San Francisco, to a dealer in San Francisco directly, for multiple thousands of dollars. And we sold a number of other books directly to other booksellers across the country for thousands and thousands of dollars, because we were able to bring in an appraiser. So sometimes it is really essential. And it's also essential because sometimes people think that, there are really rare paintings or something in a home, and we'll bring in an appraiser and find out that they're not. So it's just a good reality check back both ways. When you bring someone aboard that has appraiser connections, you can find, we've been saying, gems in a house that you think is garbage.
Yeah,
literally sitting in a pile of garbage, so appraisers are worth their weight. It's worth the investment when you find something like the multi-$1,000 book in a pile of garbage.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. We have about 8 more questions. So I'm going to try to get through these questions here. How about Christmas plates from Denmark? Dave, this question is for you. Bing and Grundle, am I pronouncing that correctly? And Royal Copenhagen. Grundle, okay. So Kate writes that her mother bought one from each company for each year she and her dad were married. Kate has 140 plates and no kids or grandkids want them.
Yeah. It's a sad situation because they're beautiful plates. They're extremely well done. People have a great affinity to them for years and years, and many people bought them every year that they came out. Either Royal Copenhagen or Bing and Grundle, for example. And yet you will see them now at auctions. They will sell for $5 to $10 a plate, which may have cost $50 to $100 to buy originally. And it's sad because there's so much of an emotional bondage to those plates because they belong to parents or grandparents or whatever. But the problem is that the older people that will appreciate those plates are selling them. Younger people may appreciate them, but are not collecting them. So where's the marketplace? The marketplace has disappeared. And as a result, those plates, my guideline has always been 1964. If the plate is made by Bing and Grundle or Royal Copenhagen and it predates 1964, it has potentially more value than one that is later. The only offset of that would be a brand new plate where somebody is trying to complete a collection right now. They might be willing to spend a little more money for a very recent plate. But again, 1964 is my magic number. And we just don't buy them anymore. We bought them in the past and we've had them for years and years and years, and there's just not a marketplace for them. And that's sad because they're quality and they mean something to the family.
That is sad, but thank you for sharing with us what the current marketplace is, what the reality is, Dave, because it's important to know. Our next comment, Sarah thinks that she has a squash flower necklace, so that's exciting. So Sarah, maybe you want to reach out to Larry about that if you're interested in letting that go. Then we have a question from Johanna. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Any thoughts on the value or sellability of vinyl records from the 60s, rock, and old magazines with a historic cover story / article from the 60s and 70s? Who wants to take that one? So we've got vinyl and old magazines.
The short answer is it depends. That's all I've got. I had vinyl in my dealer space and a few sold like that really quickly. And the others, I moved them around from shelf to shelf. I ended up donating them.
Yeah.
So
the
research.
best story I can think of is the inference of jazz records. Older jazz records have a market out there that you wouldn't believe. If it's the right artist and the right renditions, can be very valuable.
True.
If you have other records, they have very little value. So it's a matter of you have to do some research on them.
Yeah.
And then what about older magazines or even newspapers with articles about historic events?
Well, she was mentioning the 60s. And again, if maybe it's a magazine that this person had gone to a concert and had it signed, that's something like that. But I've not had luck selling those online. And they would just be ignored or rifled through in my dealer space. So I wouldn't even put them in there. That's just me.
Yeah, they're a hard sell because you have to find the needle in the haystack.
Yes.
There's certain very specific things, magazines and vinyl, that are worth a bundle, but you got to know what they are and you got to find them and they've got to be in perfect condition. Right. And you have to know what you're looking for, and unless you're in that specific genre, it's hard to know what is what. Thank
you for that. I feel like every house we work in, people have a collection of National Geographics going, everyone's got the Encyclopedia Britannicas, all those things. And they end up usually in the recycling bin. Yeah. Larry?
Whitney? Just to add to that just a little bit, I agree. I think it's very hard to try to find a marketplace for those. But to the flip side of that, if you have some very specific comic books, they, depending upon what the issue number is and what the condition is, oftentimes are highly marketable and in great demand. So just something to keep in mind.
Fantastic, thank you. We got just a few comments about excitement over the fountain pens and the potential value there. So I'm sure Juanita's going to be calling you up, Larry or Jennifer. And a question from Melissa: what about someone who decorates for commercial businesses such as restaurants, pubs, etc., and they want authentic items like well-kept farm implements, farm things, or German pub things? Is there a source for those?
Honestly, shopping down in Aurora is a great resource for farm. Did you say farm things? Was that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun things and
I find that,
drifting.
yeah, I find that shopping in Aurora is great for that sort of type of item.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody have a lead on German pub things that are authentic in our area or online somewhere? Okay.
No.
It comes to you at 2 a.m. Let us know. So another question from Miyuki.
Excuse me, I was actually asking if there were commercial people who specialize in getting things to restaurants and pubs in those areas. I have German
Gotcha.
pub things. I
Okay.
have, yeah. So that
Okay.
was the question. A little different.
Thank you for clarifying, Melissa. Thank you. Okay, so reverse that question. Anybody want to tackle that?
Well, with that, the response about Aurora was, it made me think of, I can't remember the name of it for sure, and I can't Google because I'm on my phone right now. Architectural salvage. It's a large architectural salvage place, and they are a company that I suggest that you contact, and they will ask for an emailed picture, and they would be the type of place that would be definitely willing to take a look at what you have for sale.
Oh, it's Aurora Mills. Is that what you're talking
Thank
about?
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Takes a village.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking of when I said Aurora.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank
They
you.
should
And
be a good resource.
thank you for that, you two. We'll definitely include links to the resources that are shared today in our email that goes out afterwards. So if somebody isn't able to write this down right now and capture it, we'll share it after. The next question is about a lightwood Yamaha piano, possibly antique, that was shipped from Japan to Cedar Mill in 1976. What's the best way to sell it? I know pianos are tough. Does anyone want to tackle pianos?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Pianos
Okay.
are real tough. They're just real tough.
Yeah.
Any way you slice it.
I
would
usually
maybe call
clients donate them to a charity like Play It Forward, or there's a art exhibit around Portland every summer where they decorate and paint pianos and put them out on public display. So those are my two go-tos.
And there might
does anybody else have ideas for pianos? Yeah.
There's piano push play. That might be the one you're talking about, Whitney. Okay.
Yeah, with Michael Allen Harrison's foundation.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Any other ideas for trying to, well, there's classic pianos. That could be a good place to start too. It's just, it's on Southeast Powell Boulevard.
Yeah, the thing that we always tell our clients to do is just check with all the piano companies in town to see if the piano that you have is something that they might want to take in on consignment, because they do take pianos in on consignment, but again, they have to be, a very specific thing that they have a market for. A buyer for. So it is worth making the phone calls to see if your piano fits in that, frame that they're looking for. And then beyond that, it's harder. It's hard to sell a piano outside of a piano company.
The big question that I always had when I was still working as an organizer pre-COVID, pre-pandemic era, is when I would call around and ask companies that possibly might purchase them was, has this piano been kept tuned every year? Is it currently tuned? Huge as far as selling a piano. If it's even possible to have it purchased. So that's probably one of the first questions that will be asked.
That's good to know. And something else to consider is just the cost of moving the piano even to the consignment
Right.
shop. And then it has to be retuned after it's been
Yes.
transported. So
Right.
sometimes even if it is sold on consignment, the fees for transporting it, you know, you end up really making very little, if anything at all. But maybe it finds a loving home. But it's worth
Yeah.
looking into, calling the local piano stores. So
Right.
thank you, everybody, for that. Sarah is looking for a contact to sell jewelry to, precious gems, gold, silver in the Portland area. Do you have any recommendations? And she apologizes if it was already covered. I don't think we talked about specific resources for selling gems.
I have a resource for selling gems, and I'll be glad to get that to you. I don't have it with me right now, but I'll be glad to share it with you, with Sarah.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I have a good one for gold and silver that I can also
Okay.
share when
Great.
when I'm able to grab it.
I know, right?
That sounds good. Thank you. And Jill has a question. How do you find an appraiser? Anyone want to address this question?
Just generally speaking, one good resource just for a basic list is if you go on the Estate Sale Finder website and go under the resources page, there is appraiser resources on that. So that's a good place to at least start. And you can start calling down that list and asking questions about what it might be that you want appraised and see if that fits within people's wheelhouses. It kind of depends on if you want like a full estate appraisal, if you want specific items appraised, you know, do you want art appraised? Do you want jewelry appraised? Do you want rare books appraised? Because those might be completely separate people from a full estate appraisal.
I know one time you helped us bring in a doll expert.
Yeah, right.
They were a little creepy, those dolls. And then we have another question. Do all of you sell things for clients online? And some of you have addressed this, but if you could we'll make a little loop here.
I do sell online, and as I had mentioned before, that I do buy items outright. I don't consign, but I sell online.
And we do not sell online. We sell through estate sales and then through our retail consignment showroom at Urbanite.
So, and then we know Dave and Larry sell online. So 3 out of the 4 of you. Marcia just has a comment. She says, thank you for all your knowledge. It's fascinating what's valuable and what isn't. And Sarah mentions, yes, there are various charities that do take pianos, which we covered. We talked about jewelry buyers, and you guys are going to look at your resources. Question from Jane. Who would you recommend to look at collections of old coins that she and her husband inherited?
I also have a coin person. And so I can get that information when we're done as well, if we can get that information to that person.
That sounds good. Thank you, Julie. Yeah. And we will also share your contact information with all of the attendees as well, so they can follow up on their side too. Jill says, thank you all. Great information. She has to go. So Melissa writes that she's had appraisals before, and some do written for insurance, some do verbals for sale, right?
Yes. Usually a written appraisal is going to have a higher fee.
Right.
Okay, that's good to know. Those are all the questions in the chat. I'd love to, open it up. Does anybody want to ask a live question? Just feel free to take yourselves off mute and ask away. And if not, I have some questions that have come up as we've been chatting that I can throw into the mix.
I've got one.
Great, go for it.
Any resources for selling baseball cards and signed baseballs?
I don't have one.
eBay, again, is a marketplace that should be considered. And each individual card in baseball would basically have to be reviewed and analyzed to determine whether or not there's value to them.
That
There
sounds
is
like a
an app.
time-consuming and an expensive process.
Actually, Laura, sorry, I was just gonna let you know that there's an app that you can scan your baseball cards now and it will tell you the approximate value. Of course, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but we'll send that out in our follow-up email. But that could make your process a lot faster and less painful.
Okay. Because I have sets that are from the 80s and 90s that are unopened. The tops set that are unopened. So I don't know if those have any more value than individual cards.
It's usually a lot of, I don't know a lot about baseball cards, but we worked in a house that had a lot of sports trading cards one time. And what I learned was that, it just depends on if that set has like one particular card within the set that is something valuable or something like that. I don't know. That's baseball card or sports trading cards is again a whole universe of its own, much like the comic books and whatnot. It's really a life of its own.
Thank you for your question, Laura. Anybody else have a question?
Sure, Missy again. I have, nobody's dying and I'm not selling the house, but I have 3 to 4 generations of antique furniture from both sides of the family. And it's too much. And I've lived with it for so many years. And I don't, I keep thinking, I don't mind selling it at a very low price. I just want someone who wants it to buy it. I don't want to haul it to, someplace. I just, I'm perplexed. Any comment would be appreciated.
Want someone who's going to appreciate these antiques that have been in your family. Yeah, understandably.
I don't really, I'm not trying to get money. I'm trying to pass along. And my mother was a master refinisher and they're beautiful. So, yeah.
If you were able to send us some photos via email of some of these items, I'd be happy to take a look at them and see, if perchance they'd be something that would work in our consignment showroom, and if not, give you some resources for where you might be able to send those items. We could just kind of chat about what you might be able to do with some of this stuff to make sure that it gets a new life somewhere.
Thank you.
Similar to your suggestion before about contacting Aurora, sometimes taking pictures that clearly show what the piece of furniture is and forwarding them to some of the shops in Sellwood, Oregon, would be a reasonable thing to do. I know that they are the antiques capital of the area. Might be something to consider.
Thank you.
Thanks for your questions, Missy. And Larry, you bring up a good point. So a lot of consignment specialists will want you to send photos. They don't want you to turn up on their doorstep with your furniture or your items. Like oftentimes it has to be approved before you can make arrangements for them to accept it. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about that process, or is there anything to add?
I have something to add. It just gave me the thought of when Larry had mentioned Sellwood, that to start pounding the pavement and go into those shops, take a look around and see which dealer might have that item, that sort of item in their space. And if they don't have any information about them possibly buying, go to the front desk, ask for their dealer number and information, and then contact that dealer about possibly purchasing an item. There's also Monticello Antiques that really has a lot of awesome antique furniture in both parts of it's a huge, huge space. But I think start pounding the pavement, look to see what people have that's similar to yours, and start making phone calls or emails.
Thank you.
Thank you again for the question. Dave?
Yeah, I just was thinking about furniture in Sellwood. Bob and Marcia Spencer have Spencer's Antiques in Sellwood, and he does a lot of furniture. And it might be worthwhile to give him a call. It'd be very valuable also to look at your furniture and see if there's any names on the bottom hidden underneath, because certain pieces and certain companies have much more value than others. But Bob Spencer's been around for a long time and very knowledgeable about furniture.
Thank you for sharing resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
To that
One
point-
more. Oh, go ahead, Larry. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say to that point, in terms of whether or not photographs should supersede physically seeing the item. I know in my own situation, I rather see the item physically, look at it, evaluate its condition, determine whether or not it has any labeling on it or anything like that. If you were unable to do that, and if it's through photography, it's really important to try to provide pictures that clearly show what the item is, to give a sense of its condition, its size, and specifically if there's a name or some identification mark on it, that makes it infinitely easier to give a sense of its value.
Thank you.
Correct.
We're gonna-
One more option is always to send items to auction. If you want, that's always an option that is out there. And usually for clients, we try to figure out places for their items to land before sending them to auction. But that may be something to investigate.
Thank you for
How
sharing.
about, can I ask about sets of things like Disney paraphernalia, collections, Mickey Mouse, that sort of thing? Is there any market for that anywhere?
I've got I don't know if it'll help or not. It depends. It's another one of those that depends on the age. It depends on the condition, and what it is. Is it the old and vintage cells of artwork? Is it something that Disney has retired? And so it just takes some taking a look at it. Email us some pictures. You'll have our contact information, and we can give you an idea of if that's something that might sell.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. One question that hasn't come up yet is the BBF, the big brown furniture phenomenon. Does anybody, I see Julie laughing. Does anybody want to address this?
Big brown furniture. Big brown furniture is something that is real difficult to consign. It's also real difficult to donate. Since COVID, in particular, the parameters for donation of furniture items has gotten more and more narrow. Even, Goodwill is not taking what they used to take. And we're finding that a lot of things that were donatable, big brown furniture. So we're talking, kind of the massive pieces of furniture from, the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of it head to the dump. There are a lot of people right now, or a handful of people right now in town who are taking some of those items and refinishing and painting them and reselling them. Lounge Lizard on Hawthorne has been doing that for a number of years. And then there are people who are doing that on a smaller scale. But it is extremely hard to rehome that furniture. Some of the larger consignment furniture companies in town, like Consignment Northwest and whatnot, they're also not taking that furniture. And so that, it's one of those things where the last handful of years, it's gotten harder and harder and harder to find a home for those pieces, unfortunately. If anyone has any suggestions, because, those are always the pieces that are left over at estate sales as well. And we have to just have haulers come and take them away, unfortunately.
Did you say health concerns?
No.
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 Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
I thought you said post-COVID because of.
Oh, no. Just since COVID, there have been the parameters for what agencies will take on donation has become smaller and smaller and smaller. So they're not necessarily health concerns, but just what they will take has gotten more narrow.
Thank you. I never would have thought that, because people always need furniture. So I'm surprised. Okay.
Yeah.
But they're selective about what they're wanting these days. And Jean, our assistant Jean, who's helping us facilitate this, said, "What in the world is that?" And she lives in the Philippines. So I think it's also very, US based, this phenomenon of the big brown furniture. At least that's my understanding. Maybe other countries have this challenge as well, but
I
Sarah.
think it's Jean Harkin who asked the question. It's Jean Harkin.
Oh, sorry. Different Jean. Oh, and hi, Jean Harkin. I'm glad that you're here. She's so lovely. And she's a local published author from Cedar Mill, just published her first book and sent us a dedicated copy to our team. So that was really sweet. So big brown furniture. Sorry. Could somebody kind of define it in a sentence or two?
Thank you. Okay. What is big brown furniture?
So big brown furniture is just kind of the generic term to describe the very oversized brown pieces of furniture that were very popular from the 1970s through the early 2000s. So this very large scale furniture that was oftentimes this kind of dark brown, whether it's, oversized china cabinets, entertainment centers, dining, dressers, dining sets, that sort of thing. They were just massive and very, very brown. And people, they're just, one of the reasons why it's so hard to donate them right now is because they're just not what people want. They're not what people want to furnish their homes with right now. People are a little more minimal in their wants, and so they're harder for places like Goodwill and whatnot it's harder for them to sell them, honestly.
And Sarah put a comment in the chat here. She recommends, if you really need to find a home for your big brown furniture, to offer it for free on Facebook Marketplace or buy nothing. And the benefit is that you don't have to pay for it to be hauled away. Someone will hopefully get it and maybe repurpose it and give it some new life. So
Yeah.
one question I want to address before we go today is just the process about working with professionals such as yourselves. Like, what should people be looking for when they're working with a consignment or resale dealer? Because unfortunately, there might be some disreputable folks or dishonest folks out there. So what should we be aware of and looking for?
I think request references.
Yeah.
And when you get the references, either call them or email them. Actually do the homework, call the references.
Yes, I would echo that. Everyone who does what we do should be able to offer you a great list of references of clients that we've worked with before, and be happy to do so. You know, that's how we, most of us work by word of mouth. And so we usually have people that, we love to, to have sing our praises. I think another important thing is ask about insurance. Are people insured? We're taking your property into our possession, and you want to make sure that, God forbid something happens while it's with us, that it is insured. And that, there's a contract in place or clear parameters about how the process works. And, is there a consignment time period, and what happens when that time period lapses, and just, really ask all the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions, because anyone that's doing this should have the answers.
One thing that I know that you and Larry do, and maybe Jennifer does as well, is that you provide your clients with a list of the items that you took from the home, and Larry even includes a whole photo of the item. Because sometimes in the past, clients have said, oh, I worked with so-and-so and they took 100 items out of my house and I don't even have a list of those. So how do I track everything? So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, everything that leaves your possession should be inventoried, and that inventory provided to you in some format. And then some sort of tracking of what has sold monthly, so you know what is still out there and what has found a new home. There should be some sort of active inventory process throughout.
We have time for maybe one or two more questions. Does anybody have additional questions for our experts? Or any last thoughts from our experts on anything you want to share that we haven't covered today?
I'd like to add just one last thing. In the type of business that I do, which is personal consignment, I meet with the individuals and we look at their items. And oftentimes, they'll have some very nice things, but I'm unable to help them with it. So I always try to remind them that I'm just the messenger, and that they shouldn't be upset with me, and that they need to realize that even though I might not take something because I don't have a market where I think I can sell it, doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily have value, and that they should perhaps pursue some other resale avenues.
Well said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that. And thank you everybody for coming or for watching this later. Next month, we're going to be talking about how do you let go of sentimental items. Always a tough topic for folks. So please come back on Wednesday, July 5th from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific. And thanks again. I hope everybody has a great evening.